So I guess the question is, sometimes, are remakes better? So Pet Sematary tells the story of a family moving into a country home in New England that finds out that behind the woods in their property lies a burial ground that brings the dead back to life. Alright everyone, the day has come. Pet Sematary, the remake, is finally upon us. If you guys have been following me for a while, if you saw my review for the original Pet Sematary movie, you know that I am a gigantic fan of that first film. It's probably in my top 20, 25 films of all time. I love it that much. The movie is very special to me. So I had high expectations, obviously, going into this remake. Had a lot of controversy throughout the marketing, which I'm going to keep this very spoiler-free because I don't want anybody to have the experience that I had, to where the movie kind of spoils the big surprises that it has in store for you. But a little controversy leading up to this film, with trailers giving away so much of what this film had in store to kind of surprise us viewers. But nonetheless, this isn't a review on the trailer, this is a review on the film. So I've seen the remake. As a huge fan of the original Pet Sematary, I'm going to try my best to review this as its own thing and not continuously compare it to the remake, but it's gonna happen. So for anybody that does not like reviews that talk about brand new movies by comparing it to the old movies, you're probably gonna hear some stuff that's gonna piss you off, because it's almost impossible for me to review certain aspects of this film without comparing it to what came before. So naturally, we're in a time of nostalgia. We're in that 80s nostalgia. Stephen King is a very high property, not only for nostalgia, but just because it was a huge success financially and critic and fan reception wise. So everybody's looking to get their hands on all the different King properties. We're going to probably start to see a lot of Stephen King movies remade or readapted, however you want to say it. And Pet Sematary is one that I was really looking forward to, because I feel like there's a lot in there. As much as I love that original film, there's a lot that you could improve upon, because there are some aspects of that original film that's dated. And this one got taken over by the directors of Starry Eyes, which is a film that I've heard great things about. I've yet to see, but I did buy it. I bought it a couple of days ago. I've yet to watch it. I'll probably watch it tomorrow. They lined themselves up with a great cast. Every single name that was announced leading up to the making of this movie really excited me, especially John Lithgow being cast as Judd. All the production value looked really good. I only watched the first trailer for reasons that you guys should already know. I'll get into it a little bit, but the second trailer was like spoiler filled, so I avoided it like hell.
Here we go. Okay, so what do you think?
Wow. This whole place is ours?
I even got him to throw in a whole forest as a new backyard.
So does the movie meet my expectations? Did all of that anticipation, all of the things that seem to be working in this movie's favor leading up to its release actually come to fruition? Let's get into it. The positives of Pet Sematary. And first and foremost, I will commend these directors very much by taking this story into some bold new directions. I'm not going to tell you what bold new directions. If you've seen the trailer, you already know. If you haven't seen the trailer, congratulations. You'll probably be a lot more affected by these changes than I was, because unfortunately it was spoiled for me. But a lot of the remakes tend to really stick to that original source material too much. And I'm one of those people that I always say, if you're going to make a remake, especially to a film that's beloved, you should always take it in some bold new direction. Don't just go beat for beat the way that the other movie did, because we already have that movie. That movie exists. Like, you might put a new shine on it, you might have a new updated look to it, but we're gonna see everything around every single corner, and every aspect of your film is gonna immediately be compared to that one. Whereas if you get a movie like this, where they take the approach and go in a lot of bold new directions, to where I'd say 40% of this film is completely different than the original film and probably the novel, which I've yet to read, then you have some surprises in store. And as somebody who loves the original film, it's nice to be able to watch a remake and still be able to be taken on a ride and not know exactly where everything is going to end up. So that's the biggest thing I'm going to praise these guys for, is that I commend you very much for having the balls and for having the stance to take a beloved property like this and go into bold new directions. And that is how you should do remakes. It's also one of the reasons why I'm such a big advocate of this Child's Play remake. Please do not suck. Production value, awesome. The way that the Pet Sematary looks, the way that the Micmac burial ground looks, and like the swamp leading up to it. I like the old country feel of this house as well as Judd's house. I really like what they did to kind of up the production value a little bit, and they have a really good atmosphere in this movie as well. Like, especially whenever you get to those scenes, whenever like Judd and Lewis are kind of going to bury something in the Pet Sematary, or even just kind of whenever they're hanging out in the Pet Sematary in daylight, whenever Ellie first kind of comes across it, whenever they first get to this house. There's a good little creepy atmosphere to it, and it's one of the things that I love the most about, I loved a lot about that original film, and this film has its own flavor to it. It has its own little flavor of atmosphere. There's even like a basement in this house that has its own weird atmosphere to it. There's like a door that's completely dark and you can't see what's behind it, and there's a couple of times where a character goes down into this basement and hears noises or voices or breathing through this door, and you just kind of get this chill, this atmospheric chill of being in a basement that you know something really terrible probably happened in or is about to happen in. That pliable tension, that pliable atmosphere, definitely something that this movie did well.
It was a myth. Kids used to dare each other to go into the woods at night. They knew the power of that place. They feared it.
I also really liked an aspect that they brought to this one, which was kind of hinted at in the original film, and I'm not sure if it's really harped on in the novel or not, but in this film, Lewis is very like, I don't know if he's atheist or agnostic, but he doesn't believe in the afterlife. He doesn't believe in heaven, doesn't believe in hell. He just believes, you know, in science. You die, you go into the dirt. And then his wife, on the other hand, has this very traumatic experience with her sister Zelda, which we're going to get into. Hello. And she has this very strong opinion about the afterlife, where you go when you die, how much they need to tell their kids. And although they don't fully realize that whole idea to the extent that I would have liked them to, there's a good bit of the character interactions between husband and wife regarding how they're parenting their kids and like their different worldviews, or I guess afterlife views, that brings an interesting dynamic to those characters about just a husband and a wife with two completely different outlooks and how they can kind of collaborate with each other to parent their kids and teach their kid about death and grief and the afterlife. I thought that was a really interesting aspect that they brought to this. Well, I just got Lee's reception on this film. Lee, I'm recording right now as well. So, fun little Easter egg for you fans out there. And my final positive. This is a small aspect of this film, and I don't really consider it a spoiler because it's not like this huge twist or this huge different take that they have, but it is a very small, subtle thing that I liked that gives this its own sort of flavor to it. And I believe it is in the novel, so this is just kind of going in more of a novel accurate direction. They really kind of subtly explore the Wendigo, or the Wendigo, however you want to say it, which is basically this mythical creature that lives in the woods that kind of gives more of a supernatural explanation to how things are able to be how you're able to be pulled to the Pet Sematary, and how the Pet Sematary itself and the surrounding woods are able to kind of mentally fuck with you throughout this movie, just like it did in the original movie, making people see things and hear things that aren't there. I like how they subtly include that. It makes a nice little aspect to the lore that wasn't in that original film. It gives it its own little flavor when they're walking through the woods and you can hear like subtle little sounds of a creature out there. That stuff is really neat. So I like that small little aspect that they added into this, and it does go a little bit more novel accurate for those of you that are sticklers about sticking to the source material. Now, the mixed element. And the main thing that I'm mixed on in this is the acting and the actors that were chosen for these roles. It's a very, very difficult thing to kind of wrap my head around, but every single person that is cast in this film, from Lewis to Judd, are far and away a better actor than the actors that were cast in the original Pet Sematary film. Like, John Lithgow is like one of the greatest actors that have ever lived. I fucking love John Lithgow. But while these are clearly better actors, and clearly actors that have much more talent and range than the actors that were chosen for the roles in that original film, they are not nearly as good or as effective in these roles as the actors that were chosen for that original film. Like, John Lithgow is easily a better actor than Fred Gwynne, but Fred Gwynne wipes the floor with John Lithgow's version of Judd. And that's where it's mixed, because I think that John Lithgow, we'll focus on him for just a moment, because he's the one that I was really excited about when I heard him cast, because I absolutely love that guy as an actor. John Lithgow as Judd, I think he does very, very good in the role. And I think he does about as good as you can expect any actor to do in that role that is not Fred Gwynne. But he's not Fred Gwynne. He doesn't have the charm. He doesn't have the emotion that Fred Gwynne brought to it. He doesn't have the accent and that kind of, just that iconic nature of that character. He does very good. He has some emotion here and there. He has a nice little connection with Ellie that I like, and how they kind of explore that and why he kind of pushes Lewis to bury the cat Church in this pet cemetery to kind of keep Ellie from being hurt. I like all that, but it just does not fit, and it does not feel nearly as effective as it was when Fred Gwynne was portraying that character. Same thing with Jason Clarke. I think Jason Clarke is a damn good actor. I don't necessarily like all the roles that he's chosen, but like I really like him in Planet of the Apes. He's done a lot of like Zero Dark 30 films like that. The guy is a really good actor, and you get him in this role in the first half of the film whenever he's just focusing on being a doctor and a father and everything. I'm going, okay, when it gets to the emotional side of this stuff, when like the grief starts to set in, he's gonna knock it out of the park. And I'm admittedly a Dale Midkiff defender. A lot of people shit on that guy because he was kind of a soap opera actor, and then they give him like shit for certain aspects of his performance. And I think Dale Midkiff brings leaps and bounds more grief and emotion and trauma to that role than Jason Clarke does at all. Because the entire second half of this film, when things really start to get heavy, it feels emotionless from him. It feels emotionless from the whole cast to a degree. There's tears, there's a little bit there, but you don't feel it. You don't feel their performance like you did in the original film. You don't feel that grief. You don't feel that emotional struggle about, I cannot go on living until I put this in the pet cemetery and get this back. I cannot go on living until I get my child back, until I get this cat back. There's no like internal struggle, this internal turmoil that was so present in that original film. It's just not here. It's really good actors doing a good job for the roles that they were given, but there's that aspect that's missing. And that is so important to what this film is trying to go for and what the story is trying to go for, because the original Pet Sematary is like one of the best, if not the best, explorations of grief that I've ever seen. And that movie is just so disturbing for how deep it gets into your inner psyche about how you would respond to these situations. I didn't get that at all from this film, and I'm laying the blame on the actors. Fantastic actors, they just don't work in these roles the way that the original film did. Now here's the big one. And again, it's gonna be so hard to talk about without spoilers. The big twist that they have in this film, the big change that they make, which most of you are probably already clued in on because you were unfortunate enough to watch the trailer or somebody spoiled it for you like they did me. While, like I said in my positives, I totally commend and totally champion somebody doing something bold and interesting and unique to make their film different than the original, and I still hold to that. The twist that they implement here, the direction they decide to go, not nearly as effective as it was the original way. And again, it's hard to discuss in detail without spoilers, but the way they decide to go, it really misses the mark about what was so disturbing and what was so heart-wrenching about why it was the way it was in the novel and in the original film. The way that it was before has such a power to it and such a grief-stricken, like, heart-wrenching reaction to it as an audience member and as the cast members and as these characters. When you go in this new direction, although it opens up a lot of possibilities for the third act and how things are going to play out and how differently these two characters are going to behave, it's not nearly as effective. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's just not nearly as effective and it's not nearly as emotional as it would have been if it was left alone. And now the negatives. Let's start with the big one. Zelda is completely mishandled in this film. Now, I walked into this knowing that it was not going to have the same effect that this Zelda had on me. I've said it numerous times in other videos, and I'll say it again. There are literally two characters in horror film history that have scared the living shit out of me when I was growing up as a kid watching horror films. And it's Zelda and Tim Curry's Pennywise. And Zelda is definitely the top dog of those two. I walked into this film knowing that it was not going to have that same effect on me. But I was hoping that they would at least do the character right and do it in a new way or a different way that would at least kind of hold true to how disturbing and how integral that character was to kind of the baseline of what they were going for with the themes and the message of that original film and the novel. You get into this, and they hammer you over the head so many times throughout the runtime of this film about how Rachel is grief-stricken about her sister Zelda, and it's kind of formulated her thought process on how afterlife works. And it's to the point where it's like, this bitch walks around all the time just grief-stricken about her sister and scared about her sister and kind of affected by her sister. And it's like, it's to the point it's like Jamie Lee Curtis's fixation on The Shape in Halloween 2018. She's got the same fixation about Zelda. And it's like, how does... You've been married to her for how many years? You've had 2 kids and you still haven't quite resolved this? Like you're just now having the conversation about what the fuck happened with Zelda? That was weird, but the movie just reminds you too much about Zelda, and it's like it's building it up, and it builds up to nothing. There's one pretty effective scene just for the technical aspects alone when she's kind of having this vision in this bathroom and she opens up the medicine cabinet and sees Zelda. That was a pretty cool scene, but the movie just goes back to Zelda so many times that it's too much. It doesn't work for what the character was supposed to be utilized for. It's disturbing and terrifying in the original film because she tells this disturbing story, which is scary enough, and then you're shocked when she shows up later on whenever mentally everybody's starting to get fucked with because of the Pet Sematary, and you're like, oh, it's Zelda. This movie, it lets you know every 15 minutes, Zelda's coming at some point. Zelda's coming at some point. Hey, remember about Zelda? Hey, by the way, she's still grief-stricken about Zelda. Have I told you about Zelda lately? And it's like, no, completely missed the mark. And even just the way, whenever you actually get to see Zelda, it's just not nearly as effective and not nearly utilized as well because it's all jump scares. Which brings me to my next negative, the scares in this. Jump scares, all right, whatever. Is that all we can do nowadays is jump scares? Now, I will say this is not like the most egregious jump scares I've ever seen in my life. A lot of them are effective jump scares and true jump scares. It's not like, the fake out jump scares that we see in a lot of cheap ass movies in January and February, but still, it's like Pet Sematary is scary because of the dread and because of the grief and because of everything going on underneath the surface and everything that's going on between these characters and all the emotions flowing. It was never scary because of jump scares. And I feel like by utilizing jump scares for the main source of your scares in this film, it's another aspect of just how you kind of missed the mark about what was important about Pet Sematary.
It may be just some crazy folk tale, but there is something up in those woods. There's something that brings things back.
Now, while I had a lot of mixed response to some of the casting choices and some of the portrayals and execution of the characters in this film, there is some characters that I think they really screwed up with, and one of them is Pascal. Pascal was such a huge piece of that original film, being kind of like this friendly ghost that's trying to keep Lewis from making huge mistakes. The look of the character, the portrayal, like it's a very interesting, creepy, off-putting way that they portray that character in the original film. In here, they try to minimize it to the point where it's almost non-existent. Like, Pascal almost feels like he doesn't even have a place in this film. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, they try to minimize it so much to probably try to keep away from some of that campiness of the original and not to focus too much on the logic breaks about how Lewis is able to have these full-on conversations with this ghost but never really have much of a reaction to it with the way they portray him in this film. But they just don't do anything with him. Like, they show up, they have the same exact scene where he almost, saves him and then he dies and then he sits up and says his name and then later on he visits him at night and he has the mud on his feet and everything like that. But he's a ghost that is barely present throughout the film. His portrayal or his presence isn't there. His utilization in the story isn't really there. He's just a voice that comes through once in a while because the novel had it and because the original film had it. But you could take Pascal out of this movie completely. This movie is exactly the same. And that's not good, because that's just one of the best aspects of that original film is that interaction with that character of Pascal and him just really trying to help Lewis and trying to prevent this horrible tragedy from happening. Afterthought in this movie. And again, it's going to be difficult to discuss it without spoilers, but one of the big things that they changed in this film is changing the level of focus certain characters get, the level of screen time and the importance of the story. and the character that kind of gets changed to the background gets left in the background completely, to the point where the movie almost forgets this character exists until the third act, and then you're like, oh yeah, which I feel like is gonna rub some Pet Sematary fans the wrong way, because while I do appreciate and do really commend the bold new directions, the change also has to accommodate the other character and keep that character present in the story and still keep them relevant to the story somewhat and put them in some kind of danger that we actually really care about, and it just doesn't do that. Like, it just completely forgets about them. It's going, nope, we're going with this person, that person can fuck off. Nope. Not gonna fly. And my final negative for Pet Sematary is that the third act of this film is so rushed. And that might be just a pacing issue that I probably didn't realize throughout the entire film, is maybe it takes too long kind of building up to everything, and then when it actually gets to everything, it just kind of rushes through it to the end. But as soon as like the crazy shit starts to happen in the third act, as soon as everything starts to kind of come to its head, as soon as everybody starts to be in this really deadly situation in the third act, it feels like everything that's going to happen happens within about 10 or 15 minutes of each other. It feels so rushed. Like, from the time that Lewis makes the decision to bury his child in the Pet Sematary, from the time that that act happens to the end credits, it feels like all of the emotions and all of the discoveries and all of the unveils and everything that's supposed to happen with these characters and all the internal turmoil that they have about what they're supposed to do and whether they did the right thing or not, as well as just all of the violence and all of the killing that happens in the third act, rushed. Everything just, it's almost like they wanted to focus so much on building up to it, and then they like ran out of time or something like that. I don't know if there's a longer cut of this film that maybe flushed out the third act better, but the third act just felt so rushed, to the point where I'm like, wow, this is where all of the stuff is supposed to really go crazy in this movie. This is where everything is supposed to like grip us to our seats, and you just kind of fast forward through all of it, to the point when the movie ends, I'm like, damn, that's it, really? That's not good. And it sucks when the final act is where you have a lot of your issues too, because that's like the last emotions that you walk out of the theater with. So like all the things that I enjoyed and liked and even had some kind of mixed reaction to throughout the first two acts, the fact that I left after that third act going, what the fuck was that? That's the impression, and that's the kind of the lasting emotion that you walk away with, which just kind of sours your movie experience. So unfortunately, the third act for me just really drops the ball in this movie. But overall, guys, is Pet Sematary a good remake? It's a good remake, good-ish. It's a remake that I commend for all the things that they try to do. It's a remake that does have a lot of things going for it. And it is a remake that I can see a lot of people really enjoying, and even some people preferring to the original film because they don't have the nostalgia or like the real serious, deep-seated response that I had to it. And that's cool, because that's what a remake should do. It should kind of elicit a response from a new generation of fans, and even get a new generation of fans to go back and check out the original source material, which is the best aspect of remakes. So, is it a remake that's worth your time to see? Absolutely. Is it a remake that completely satisfies me? No. Is it a remake that I think is better than the original? Fuck no.
Those woods belong to something else.
So if you're a fan of the novel or a fan of the original film and you want to see what new directors can do to take this story in a new, bold direction, definitely go out and check out Pet Sematary, but don't be in any rush. You're not going to miss out on anything if you wait for this thing to come online so that you can stream it. So what did you guys think about Pet Sematary? Did you enjoy this remake? Do you enjoy the original film? Do you hold it as high as I do? Did you prefer this remake? Did you have the same issues that I did? Try your best to keep your comments spoiler-free. Like, if you're gonna really dive into the big twist, try to put spoiler in the headline or something, just out of respect to some other movie fans, because it's very hard to avoid spoilers nowadays, so do your best to not be that guy or that girl. But what is your thoughts on Pet Sematary, guys? And what is the next Stephen King movie that you want to see remade? I want to see a remake of Christine, because as much as I love that film and I think that it's impossible to top, I want to see a new age version of Christine. As much as I love that John Carpenter film, and as much as I know that they're never going to top it necessarily, I just want to see a new age story of like a 2020 teenager getting a hold of this old 50s Plymouth Fury and just kind of bringing a new aspect to it. But that's the one that I want to see. What is yours? Comment down below. Please check the video description for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach t-shirts and other merchandise. and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel and help this channel grow while getting cool exclusive content for your eyes only. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. And if you want to check out some more of my previous reviews, including my review of the original classic Pet Sematary, you can check that out by clicking right over here.